We're a bit behind time to normally what. Well, we always finish at 4, and I was so blessed by Jeff's talk. It inspired us, didn't it? I mean, I thought should have just not say anything, but we may as well use the time up. So this study, Men and Their Potential, it's just a case study on Gideon. You've heard what Jeff said, you've heard what I've said about round pegs in square holes, and we can all fulfill 100% of what God put in us. So why don't we look at somebody in the Bible and see how he fulfilled 100% of what God put in him, even though he didn't know it? Because nobody knows what's in you. At 6 or 7, you don't know whether you're going to be the best dustman in the world, or the best prime minister. You don't know what's in you. Nobody's a prime minister at 6, you see. The potential's there. But you don't know. So I'm going to look at Gideon. Let's turn to Judges. And I'll just bring out a few things as the time permits. So I'm reading from Judges chapter 6. So verse 7, and it came to pass, this is the story of Israel's life, isn't it? Backslidden again. And it came to pass when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord because of the Midianites who were being afflicted, that the Lord sent a prophet to the children of Israel, which said, Thus saith the Lord of Israel, I brought you out from Egypt, and I brought you out of the house of bondage, and I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all that oppress you, and drave them out from before you, and gave you their land. To us it say, I saved you. I brought you out of the world. And I said to you, I am the Lord that your God. Fear not the gods of the Amorites, in whom land ye dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice. That's what Jeff was saying, obedience is the key. Just do what God says. He said, but I've saved you, but you've been a lousy Christian. Yeah. I saved you, but you've been a lousy Christian because you haven't obeyed what God said, and yet I delivered you. You were on the slag heap, you were in the miry clay, you were in whatever you were. You were trapped in the occult, or you're trapped in your life of pleasure. You were trapped, and I rescued you, but you've not obeyed my voice. But they did cry unto the Lord. From the pigsty, you know, you always end up in the pigsty when you do your own way, don't you? We always get in a mess. Our marriage is in a mess. Oh, Lord, help me. The career's in a mess. Oh, Lord, help me. Business in a mess. Oh, Lord, help me. It's good, isn't it? That in a pigsty you do cry to the Lord. And what does he do? Well, come out and help you. Fatted calf till you backslide again. And there came an angel. This is God's answer now. This is how God's going to deliver them because they cried. They're in the pigsty. And there came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak, which is in Ophrah, that pertained unto Joas, the Abizrite, and his son Gideon. This is the man that's got the destiny. And Gideon was threshing wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. The Midianites came and took all the harvest. They let them bring it all in, then they came down and stole it. And he's threshing wheat, and he's hiding it, so that when they come, they won't find it. God always calls men. First point we can notice. God didn't recall Israel. When they were backsliding, he didn't recall them, did he? He called one man to deliver them. God could call one man to deliver Manchester or one man to deliver England. He will never call the church. Do you know that? God won't call the church to revive England. He'll call one man to gather the church, like one man Moses gathered all Israel, but he'll call one man. You only need one Elijah, don't you? Burn up the prophets of Baal and bring the rain down. You only need one man. God will never call the church. He never calls committees. He always calls men. And so what did God do when the whole of Israel, here's a few million people saying, God, we've sinned, please forgive us, deliver us. And God always the same way, remember the pattern, God calls one man, always one man, never two, never four, always one. And it came to Gideon. Now God must have put it in Gideon before he was born, you know from today's teaching. And the angel said unto Gideon, the Lord is with you, thou mighty man of valour. Now, he didn't feel a mighty man of valour. He's hiding from the Midianites, threshing wheat in secret. Doesn't sound like a man of valour. He's not rallying the troops. Come on, we're going to fight. Don't think we're going to suffer under them. Come on. That's a man of valour, isn't it? Come on. What's up with you? We're not serving these dogs. Come on. Let's get some weapons built in secret. Let's start storing the weapons. He's storing wheat, not weapons. He wasn't planning to deliver Israel. He didn't know what was in him. And you don't know what's in you. You don't know what's in you. You've no idea. Yeah, but Maurice, I'm 60 now, I'm 70 now. So what? What's age got to do with it? God called Moses when he was 80. The burning bush came when he was 80, so what's up? Anyone over 80? So what's up with you? Can you not have a burning bush? And at 80 he started his ministry. At 80, come on. Yes, you're not past it. You don't know what God's put in. You don't pull yourself down. I think I've missed it, you know. Well, you have if you talk like that. How can you miss what you haven't started? He hadn't started. So, thou mighty man of valour. And what was his reaction? Notice he didn't prophesy. The angel didn't say, oh, Gideon. You're a wimp at the moment, Gideon, my lad. But God's going to make you a mighty man of valour. Did he say that? We think God's going to make us into something. God never made anyone into anything. Let me say that again. God never makes anybody into anything. It's already in you. He said, Gideon, you mighty man of valour. The angel recognised what was in him. Not you're going to be. The Lord will do great things with you. He said, oh, mighty man of valour. That's regardless of what God was going to do to them. Do you know he was a mighty man of valour even if he never did anything? Even if he said no to the angel. He was a mighty man of valour. God made him a mighty man of valour. All he needed to do was develop it. And he couldn't develop it till he knew. But it was in him. Don't think that God put it in him. You think, well, if God calls me, he'll equip me. No. God's already equipped you before he called you. It's in you. You don't need new equipment, you need to stir up what's in you. The talent, the gift is there when you're born, you know that. Tony Blair, that was in him to be a prime minister, a leader. He's a born leader, a born manipulator of men, a born, isn't he? You know, he's manipulating, controlling, whatever you say, 50 million people. You're born to that, you know. If you had his responsibility of 50 million people, you'd have a heart attack tonight. Just the responsibility. He was born for it. Thrives on it. But Gideon, you know, he didn't even know what was in him, so it needed developing him. Every man that God's called has had this sense of destiny. Moses, I'm going to deliver Israel through you. You know what Moses said? In Acts 6:25, it says, Moses supposed his brothers, meaning Israel, his brethren, would understand God by his hand would deliver them. But they didn't. When he killed the Egyptian, he said he thought that they would all know that he was destined, but they didn't. He had it in him, they didn't know. But Moses knew, he expected they knew. And so Gideon's result, oh my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? Where are all the miracles our fathers told us about? He didn't say, sorry, pass. I'm not the mighty man of valour. You've got the wrong man. Try next door. It's not me, it must be somebody else. I'm not a mighty man of valour. He didn't say that, did he? He accepted it. He accepted that it was a mighty man of valour. All he said was, well, how can I'm a man of valor. Well, where's the miracles of our fathers? Can you see he wasn't doubting it? He never said, not me. He said just, well, where's the miracles? Where's the demonstration? How can I be a mighty man of valor unless you help me? He's already thinking about deliverance. Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt with miracles and that? He says, this is how you do it, God, but there's no miracles now. All he was lacking was the supernatural, the miracles. How do I go about it? Really, that was his heart. And the Lord looked upon him and said, go in this thy might. Not in 10 years' time you'll be a man of valor. Go in this thy might. And thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent thee? And then he realised he couldn't do it on his own. I don't think this is a negative thing. He says, oh my Lord, how can I save Israel? My family is poor in Manasseh and the least in my father's house. I'm not worthy. That's a good thing when God calls you. And you realise what God's put in you. I'm not worthy. You look at my background. I shouldn't be there, Lord. Look at my background. How can I do this for you with my background? And the Lord said, surely I'll be with you, and you will smite the Midianites as one man. So how did God develop this what was in him? Well, God had to develop his character. The valour was already in him. I've tried to prove this morning. The talent's there. The character develops it. So God was now working on his character. Would he trust God? This is to do with character. Will you trust God? Will you obey God? Obedience is to do with character, not talent. Will you trust God? Will you obey God? Will you do what I say? God had to prove him, you see, his character, before he could use what was in him. Good job he didn't know what was in him before he'd had these lessons. You see the lessons quickly. And so he was weak. He had to learn to trust God. And he says, if now I found grace in your sight, show me a sign, because I know it'll take the miraculous. That's what he was saying. I might be a mighty man of valor, but you delivered us by miracles, not mighty men. So where are the miracles? So he asked for a miracle. He's practical, this man, you know, Gideon. He says, well, show me a sign that thou talkest with me. And you know what happened? He put a fleece out, didn't he? And no, not a fleece, sorry. He brought a gift to the angel. And the angel said, verse 20, take the flesh and the unleavened cakes, lay them upon the rock and pour out the broth, and he did so. And the angel of the Lord put forth his staff and touched the offering, and fire came and consumed it. Then the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. He got his first miracle. He's on the way, isn't he? Where's the God of the miracles? Number one. Now can you trust me? You see, because if you ask God for a miracle and he gives it you, now you're obligated to trust him. Yes. He's having to learn to trust. Now you'll be quicker to obey next time, because you said, well, I want to obey you, God, but will you do a miracle for me? A bold step. Have you asked God for a miracle? We've been fasting and praying this week, and God's answered about 3 miracles. We asked God and he answered straight away, immediately. Amazing. It's not wrong to ask God, is it, for a miracle? Lord, will you answer? And it's good I got some answers. It was a yes or no, and God says, yes, it's wonderful, I don't have to deliberate. Sometimes it's not, you know, which way should I go, and there's a million ways. Sometimes the answer is yes or no. God, I need to know, do I say yes to this man or no? And I know I'm prejudiced. I know I've got my own ego and pride, and I love a challenge and all these things. So I said I need to ask God. Expecting God to say no, because I know my own, I love a challenge, and I'll take on anything, which is one of my weaknesses. And God straight away said yes, so that was my answer. And so he asked for the miracle, he got it, so now he's getting trust. And trust obligates obedience, doesn't it? Puts us under obligation, you know. Be careful when you ask God to do a sign. Be very, very careful. Because if he answers it, next time you don't need a sign. It's yes, Lord, no, Lord, 3 bags full, Lord. How many times does he have to prove himself before we'll be obedient? So, you know, you're putting a noose around your own neck when you ask for a miracle. He might do it and trap you. Do you understand? You're setting yourself up, because if God answers by fire, what are you going to do next time he says do something? Going to ask for another miracle? Well, Gideon did. God understands. He'll give you a couple of chances. It's not hard. God's not hard. But, you know, after a while he'll say, how many miracles do they need? No sign shall be given to this adulterous generation. You see, he says, you've had all the miracles, you've had, they'd had like 1,500 years of miracles since Moses delivered them. Jesus says, what miracles do you want? You've had Moses and the prophets. No, you get no more miracles. If you don't believe me now, it's tough. That's our God. He doesn't go on forever, with chances. So first, miracle, fire out of the rock. And then as always, do you remember the principle I said with Abram when we was going through his life story? Every time he went through a trial, he got a bit further of the revelation, a bit more promise. So what happens when you go through a trial? God speaks. He's been through the test, so God doesn't just leave you there. And the Lord said to him, this is after he said, I've seen an angel, I'll die. And God said to him, peace be unto you, fear not, you won't die. You got your miracle and it scared you to death. You think you're going to joss it now? So Gideon built an altar there, and the Lord called it, and he called it Jehovah Shalom, the Lord is peace. That's where we get it, Shalom. It's from Gideon. Do you know when we say along, the Lord is peace? That was when he named it the first time. Jehovah Shalom, that's where it comes from. Gideon just had fire from heaven. Peace. Scared him to death. He says, I'll die. And God says, no, you won't. He says, thank God. God is my peace. That's where it comes from. We make it a greeting now, Shalom. We forgot where it comes from. And it came to pass the same night. So now God spoke to him. He's come through the test. God speaks to him. And now he gives, instead of Gideon proving God, you're allowed to prove God, and say, God, will you show me? Will you do a miracle? But when God does a miracle for you, then God says, now I'll give you a test. God didn't pass the test, but and he said, God, will you do this miracle? And God did it. Now God says, well, now I'll ask you to do something. And it came to pass that night, the Lord said to him, take your father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7-year-olds, and throw down the altars of Baal. This is the beginning of valor. Don't forget that the Midianites worship Baal. He says, go and destroy their altars. I mean, what worse can you do? What worse can you do to a Muslim than blaspheme Allah, than go and smash up the temple? Would you like to do that? Would you like God to say to you, go into Oldham and the big mosque there, go and smash every window in it? Goodness me. Would you like to do that and have every Muslim in the country want to kill you? Serious? God says, well, now I've done a miracle for you. The valor's in you. You better start practicing it. Develop it. Because you're going to deliver 2.5 million people, 4 million, however many there were. So if you can't do this, you'll go no further. This is not a big test compared with delivering Israel, is it? Cut down the grove that is by it and build an altar unto the Lord. Smash it down and say, this is God's country. Smash their altar down and build an altar to the Lord. Declare your ground. Say, look, this is us. Sink or swim, death or glory, this is us. We're Christians here. Darling, this house is God's house. We're having nothing in this house that doesn't glorify God. No video games, no videos. We're having nothing, no books. This house is going to glorify God. Smash down the temples, throw the videos out that you wouldn't want your pastor to see or me to see. Get rid of them. Make a stand, say, as for me and my house, we're going to serve God. And he's saying, if you're a mighty man of valor, if you're not a mouse, if you're a man, well, do what's right, Gideon. Get rid of the altars and establish God there. You're in the wrong territory. You're in the wrong territory, but crisis times. And build an altar unto it in the top of this rock so everyone can see it. Oh dear. In the ordered place, and take the second bullet and offer it for a sacrifice of wood upon the grove. What did Gideon do? Now, Gideon was a mighty man of valor in potential. He was 100% when he was born, but 100% wasn't developed. I reckon he's 20% here. What does a 20% man do? His bottle goes, doesn't it? He starts thinking, goodness me, this is too much. So he does it, but by night. He says, Lord, I can't handle this. I can't go in daylight and do that. We'll see who did it. But nobody will know it's me. All right, he did what God said, but let's not criticise him. He's developing what God put in him and learning to trust. So he got 10 men and did as the Lord had said unto him. And so it was, because he feared his father's household and the men of the city, he couldn't do it by day, and he did it by night. What's wrong with that? Don't have a go at him and say he didn't have much faith. He had enough faith to do what God said, and that's part of the growth. God's happy if you get it 50% right. Do you know that? Better to do it 50% than not try, because that's 0%. Best to go for 100% and miss and get 50%, isn't it? The world know that. Better to try and fail than never to try. Fair heart never won fair maiden. We have all these sayings in the world, the church won't apply them. It's like we've got to get 100% every time we go, oh, well, I started to pray, I got up at 5 o'clock for 3 mornings, then I failed. Well, it's all right. You did 3 days, you've never done that before, glory. Next time, go on for a week, develop it. We're not frightened of failure, are we? It's part of the process, we're not worried. And so this is wonderful, I think this is amazing he did that. And when the men of the city rose in the morning, the altar of Baal was cast down and the grove was cut down. And he said, who's done this? And he inquired and asked everyone. And he said, it's Gideon, he's done it. God says, I'll expose you, it doesn't matter, they'll all know anyway, but it'll help you. At least you did it, and then I'll expose you later. God got his way, didn't he? He had to make a stand, because people grassed him, didn't they? Who grassed him up? Somebody. He did it by night secretly. He got 10 of his best men and said, come on, don't tell anyone, we'll do it by night. They did it, come back, and then he went out, who's done that, who's done that? Somebody said, Gideon. There's always somebody who'll grass you, it doesn't matter, God knows that. God can use grasses, can't he? Hey? So he's getting exposed anyway, now he's got to have a bit more bottle. Then the men of the city said to Joash his father, bring out your son, we're going to kill him. The thing that he feared has come upon him. He thought he could do it and get away with it, but he can't. His life's on the line now. And God wanted that. Because he's cast down the altar of Baal, isn't it wonderful? But his dad stood up for him. And just said to all that stood against him, will you plead for Baal? I thought Baal was a god. Is your God not defend him? Can't Baal sort him out? He that will plead for him, let him be put to death. The man who pleads for Baal should be put to death because he doesn't trust in his God. Can't Baal destroy him? Therefore, on that day, he called him Jerubbaal, saying, let Baal plead against him because he's thrown down his altar. So his dad got him off the hook. God had planned all this. So he's come through the test. Just a natural test. Do you know he did that without God? He just did it in the flesh. Your first test is in the flesh. God will never come upon you in his spirit to do mighty miracles if you do nothing in the flesh. Don't wait for because God won't. That's the second part. The first part is you've got to do it. If you won't be obedient to God in the flesh and say to your boss, I'm leaving, I'm going full time for God. Or, darling, this house is going to be God's house. If you won't do that, God won't put his power upon you to do something mighty. Do you know that? And I believe he did that, just an obedient act in the flesh. He didn't say God was with him, he just had to get up in the night and do it. Didn't he? But now he's come through the test. Listen what happens. Then all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the children of Israel were gathered against them to the vale of Jezreel. But the Spirit of God came upon Gideon only after he'd come through the test. Now he's moving in the Spirit, but you have to move in the flesh first. Remember the study of Abraham? Always the flesh first. Ishmael first, Isaac second. Flesh first. If you won't do it in the flesh, you'll never do it in the Spirit. If you can't look after natural children, God says, why should I give you spiritual children? But the Lord, God came upon him and he blew a trumpet and he gathered all the people. And now Gideon, because he'd come up another level and God was upon him, and it wasn't now just destroy the altars of Baal, it was destroy all the Midianites. A few million of them. So there's a big difference. And his bottle went again, and he needed another sign. That's all right. So he called all Israel together and all the fighting men, and Gideon said unto God, if you will save Israel by my hand, I need strengthening, Lord. That's all right. Because he'd come through the test. and been obedient after the first one. I don't think if he hadn't been obedient, God wouldn't have answered the second one. It's a progression. And you know what happened? He put the fleece down and he said, let it be raining all night and the fleece drying, and the next night be the opposite. You know the story. And it was so on the morrow, so God answered again and did another miracle. And so he's going on, isn't he? I must rush on because of the time. Now here's some more tests. He's going to get another test. He's had another miracle. He's going to get another test, isn't he? Oh, this is a big test. Because he's a mighty man of valour, isn't he? And Israel, how many 100,000, 200,000 fighting men, I suppose, out of all Israel? 500,000 maybe, I don't know. He said the Midianites numbered millions, didn't they? Like the sand of the sea. So Israel probably had a couple of 100,000 fighting men. So he's a mighty man of valour. So here's another test now. I've done another miracle for you. You've had the fleece both ways. Yes for a yes and you got a yes, yes for a no and you got a no. So the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many. You're a mighty man of valour, but you can't have the glory. Oh, it's a hard lesson for men of God to learn. Oh, I'll tell you. You might be a mighty preacher. God's Spirit may have come upon you. You may be a mighty anointed preacher. But I didn't do it so you could get the glory. How many men want the glory? It's hard, you know. God's got to knock the puddings out of you. If you want to be a man of God, I'll tell you, he's got to humble you and break you and batter you, never seek it. He's done it so he'll get the glory. He's made you a mighty man of valour so he will get the glory. Not so you will be a mighty man of valour. Hard. Very, very, very hard. You've no idea how hard it is when God begins to move and bless you in your ministry. You've no idea how hard it is to keep humble. Is that right, Jeff? No idea. It's an ego trip. Anyone on the platform, ask Jason, ask anyone in the public, it's an ego trip. People are praising you. People say, good sermon, brother. And if you believe your own publicity, you can't. Publicity is never true. It's men's opinions. And it's very hard. And so Gideon had to learn the lesson so God would get the glory. And you know what happened? He said, the people are too many. If you win with these people, 200,000, you think, well, you know, God was with us on the day and we did fight hard, didn't we, lads? Put ourselves on the line and we went for it and God, you know, we did it with God's help. We did it with God's help. Not God did it with our help. We did it with God's help. You see, in fact, I think we might have just done it without God. That's what you're implying. You know, thank God for the extra bit he put in as well, the 2 penneth. We fought well and God just backed us up, you know. God doesn't want to back you up. He wants to fight the battles the Lord's. He just wants you to be a part of it and get no glory and disappear after the battle. Where's Gideon? We want to bless him. Oh, can't find him. Well, thank God for the victory then. He said there's 32, I won't look at my Bible because at time I've got it down. There's 32,000 men, Gideon. Oh, we know the number, don't we? He said there's too many. You might get the glory. So he put a test to them. He said, tell all the people that are fearful to go home. So they went. How many went home? 2/3. Only 10,000. He's only got 1/3 of the men he was going to win the battle with. He's a mighty man of valour, but you feel better when you're a mighty man of valour when there's a few people with you, don't you? Come on. I'm not on my own here. There's another, 33,000 is not bad when you're at the front. Imagine at the front and there's 10 behind you to the battle. It's down to 1/3 men. What a test. But God says, Gideon, when he asked for the fleece, he didn't say, right, Lord, I can go. You wanted another test, didn't you? Well, I've got to whittle you down again. Because you put 2 tests to me, I've got to give 2 tests to you. So here's number 2. There's still too many. Oh dear. And he says, go to the waters, those that lap and those. God found a way of dividing them. And how many was left out of 10,000 that were there? 300. 300 men out of 33,000. Do you know what that is? If you know your maths, 1%. 1% was left. There was 300 left after 33 days. How can you fight a battle against 1 million people with 300? Come on. But he'd been through the tests. He'd asked for a double fleece, so he got a double pruning. Be careful when you ask God for fleeces. I'm warning you. It's all right saying, put a fleece out to God. God will say, all right, I'll answer your fleece, but, as many times as you ask for the fleece, I'll do the pruning. I'll cut you down. Because you've had a double strengthening now. You've had a double confirmation. So you can do more with less now, can't you, Gideon? Surely you're extra strengthened after 2 tests. So instead of 3,000 men, you only need 300, don't you, Gideon? Yes, Lord. What do you say? The people are yet too many, and they cut them down. And God said, by the 300 that are left, I'll save Israel. Let everyone else go to the place. So the people went. God's good, Before the final battle, instead of Gideon saying to God, well, God, this is D-Day. This is the World Cup. It's death or glory. Everything else counts for nothing now if we fail. You've cut me down, I've been through the tests, but if 300 men don't beat 200,000, it's all in vain. Israel are captives again. Instead of Gideon saying, Lord, I need another sign, isn't it nice? He didn't. God says, all right, Gideon, you've come through the test, I'll give you the sign. This time. Isn't that nice? Isn't that our God? God says, you've come through, it's the big one now, it's the big one. It's the big one, Gideon. I'll give you the sign. He says, look, Gideon, if you're fearful, and he was, because he proved it to be what he did, he says, if you're still a bit worried about the consequences, because they're grave, the consequences are big, failure is big. So he says, if you're worried, go down by night into the Midianites' camp. Well, he was frightened because he did it. Let me read it. And when Gideon was come, he saw them all like grasshoppers on the ground. This was the people he was supposed to defeat with 300 men. And he crept down by night into the camp. And when Gideon was come down, behold, there was a man that told another man a dream. And he said, hey, I had a dream last night. My mate, he's just talking to his friend. And he says, I dreamed, and there was a cake of barley bread. And it rumbled down into the host of Midian. And it came to a tent, and it smote it, and it fell over, and the tent was down. And his friend said, oh, that's a funny dream. I wonder what to make of that. It just so happened he told it to a prophet, isn't it? It's unbelievable. He told it to a prophet of the Midianites. This is unbelievable, if this is not a miracle. And he gave him the interpretation, this ungodly man who was going to destroy Israel. God can speak through Balaam's ass. Don't worry where it comes from. Because the source is God if God speaks, whoever it comes through. God's word doesn't have to come through a clean vessel. You must learn that. God speaks through Balaam's ass, and the ass wasn't sanctified. It's whether God speaks, not who he speaks through. He could have spoke through next door's dog, couldn't he? God can speak through a backslider. It's whether God's speaking to you. And the devil can speak through an apostle. Get thee behind me, Satan. To Peter. We misunderstand it. The devil can speak through a man of God, and God can speak through a despot. It's not the vessel, it's who speaks, whether it's the devil or God speaking. Learn to hear God's voice and disregard the man. That was God. What about the vessel? I didn't hear the vessel, I heard God. God uses everyone for his purposes, so does the devil. And it was so when his fellow said, this is nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. How did he know who Joash was? With all the men of Israel. He's a prophet. For into his hands hath God delivered Midian and all the host. He's prophesying against himself. Only a prophet would do that. Because he's taken over by the Spirit he doesn't know. He says, this is us, we're all going to be defeated. He's prophesying the downfall. And it was so when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation, he worshipped God and returned unto the host of Israel and said, arise, for the Lord hath delivered you, not will deliver you. He didn't say, right, God's going to deliver us now. He said, it's already done. I've just heard a prophet of the enemy. It's unbelievable, isn't it? He didn't say, come on, God's going to deliver us. He said, God has done. God's delivered us. Hath delivered you into the hand and the host of Midian. And you know what happened. I don't want to go in the story. He divided the men into 3 parties, and they had pitchers and trumpets in their hand. A ridiculous thing. You don't win battles by blowing trumpets, do you? Hey? How can you win a battle by having a candle in a pitcher? Come on. It's nonsense, isn't it? God's way. That's how mighty men of valour fight. You think mighty men of valour do it as strong men. God uses weak things to confound the mighty. A mighty man of valour in God does stupid and humble things. And he had a picture in his hand. They had a sword, but they had a picture in the hand and a trumpet. No, they didn't have a sword, did they? Didn't even have a sword. Lamps were in the pictures, that's it. And you know what happened? They blew the trumpets. And when the Midianites heard the trumpets, the angels of the Lord went about the camp, and they thought they were being invaded, and they would get out of the sleep and started getting the sword and started killing each other. And the 300 blew the trumpets, and the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the hosts, and the hosts fled to Bethshittah. And then the men of Israel, all Israel then, went and destroyed them. What a victory. Conclusion, look at your life, your trials, your disasters, for the purposes of developing your character, so that you can fulfill the potential that's in you. That's what your trials are for. That's what the tests are for. That's why you ask God for a fleece. Lord, will you do a miracle? God says yes, but it'll cost you. I'll ask you for something. But all these trials now are only to develop character, so that you can develop your potential and God can use what he put in you.